We make a start with some breaking news that's coming into our office right now. An Ontario doctor has been acquitted. He's been found not guilty of the deaths of 4 patients. CTV's Colton Praill is standing by in Ottawa with more. Good morning to you, Colton. What just happened in the courts? Please tell us.
Akshay, it's something I've personally never seen. It's something the defense, who's been a lawyer for 5 decades, say they've never seen. An acquittal of their client, a not guilty verdict delivered, innocence for Dr. Brian Nadler. In 2021, he was accused of a first-degree murder, followed several weeks later by 3 additional charges of first-degree murder. All 4 were patients of this doctor who he was treating for COVID-19 at the Hawkesbury and District General Hospital in Eastern Ontario. It's about 90 minutes east and south of Ottawa. Today in court, a really astonishing thing happened. In the lead up to this, I should say, today was supposed to be the first day of a 5-week trial for this doctor. And in the lead up to this, the judge had excluded some of the Crown's evidence. Particularly, he had excluded the expert testimony of a hematologist. As a result of this, the Crown said that the judge had, for all intents and purposes, decided the case against them. They said they no longer had enough evidence in order to have a reasonable chance of conviction. And so as a result of this, they submitted no evidence today. They asked for the acquittal. And the reason that they asked for this acquittal is because if they stay or withdraw the charges, they will not be able to appeal this case in the future. So that's what we heard from the defense today. It's how we got to a not guilty verdict for Dr. Brian Nadler. But as a result of that verdict, we also heard much more from the defense. The publication ban on the case was lifted. We were able to get much more information from the defense, who say the Crown had not presented any pathological evidence. They had not presented any toxicological evidence. They say the vast majority of that case hinged on expert testimony that clearly was not allowed by the court, something that they felt was the right decision. In the decision by the judge, it noted that that expert wasn't equipped essentially to comment on this situation. The defense, meanwhile, says that they had multiple forensic experts who were able to speak on this issue, along with multiple forensic analyses, postmortems of the victims, where they say all proved that Dr. Nadler was not responsible for the death of these patients, that COVID-19 was the cause, and that any sedation that he gave them was part of the treatment process and would not have resulted in the deaths of these patients. So really a shocking decision in an unexpected manner, something that we certainly haven't seen before.
So, Colton, well, of course, this is shocking, and many are raising eyebrows of what just happened in court. The fact still remains that in the criminal process, the Crown can go ahead and appeal when we're looking at an acquittal, but they cannot appeal in this case, or rather they can, because we're not seeing charges being withdrawn or charges being stayed, but acquittal.
That's exactly it, Akshay. Because they didn't enter any evidence, because they asked for an acquittal rather than staying, rather than withdrawing, they opened the door to an appeal process down the road. And that's something that even going into today, they had highlighted as part of their plan moving forward. They knew the outcome of what was going to happen today. Really, the shock here, the surprise here, is how this case fell apart at the 11th hour. This started on Friday and continued on into today. This is supposed to be the first day of the trial. And so that's where the shock is. That plan from the Crown to open the door from an acquittal for an appeal, as a result of the acquittal, is something we could see moving forward. The defense not commenting on that. The Crown not doing any interviews after the verdict today, but they did speak to us yesterday and said that that was something they were looking as a potential option in the future.
Potential option for the future. But let's just talk about the reaction that has come in. Many families were affected. Many families were watching this case unfold closely as well. What are they saying today?
Yeah, there were friends of one of the men who died under the care of Dr. Nadler, Albert Poitinger. He was 89 years old. He died, and his family friends were there. His 2 sons couldn't be there. And they say the last week for them has been one of shock, of sadness, of confusion. They don't quite understand how it came to be that so close to this trial, several years after the first charges were laid, that the Crown's case was able to evaporate so quickly. They're confused by the fact that this all hinged on expert testimony of one person, and they're looking for answers still. They don't feel like they've been given any sort of closure or finality. We heard from the defense that they felt they would be able to argue that these deaths were the result of COVID-19. But for the family that wasn't able to be in the courtroom today, that wasn't able to hear those arguments because this trial, this evidence portion of the trial didn't happen, they say they're still looking for answers. They're still wondering what happened to their loved ones, the kind of care that they received.
CTV's Colton Praill in Ottawa. Thank you for this update, Colton.
Anytime.